Huh? Richard Burton worked on this show? Man, he hasn't been a part of tokusatsu since 1969.
This week it's child star Richard Burton, who later went on to star as Hamlet at the Old Vic Theater.
Yeah, and later in such great films as Bluebeard, Radon Rommel, and The Exorcist II.
Later, Burton got back to his roots and trod the boards as King Arthur in the smash musical Gamora. His performance was nothing less than mesmerizing, even when he drank 2 bottles before the matinee. Here are some highlights.
Gamora, I know it sounds a bit bizarre, but with Gamora, that's how conditions are. I wonder what the king is drinking tonight. I wonder if the king will get stinking
Okay,
tonight.
Crow.
Since this is a remake of the original Ultraman, the show offers us no original big bads that we haven't already seen before in any preceding series. Unless you want to count Psycho Baltan, who only appears for like 8 seconds of screen time in the final episode. The only difference is that their origins and motivations have been partially altered for their powered incarnations, which can kind of get confusing when you try to wonder if this series is really set in the same universe as the other Ultraman shows or not. The biggest threat to the planet is the Baltan aliens, who show up to cause trouble for the heroes in the first episode and the last 2 episodes. After their initial failure to defeat Ultraman, they return in episode 12, this time deploying Derocco to challenge Ultraman and retrieve fighting data from him. Once this data has been collected, the Baltans then unleash their final trump card, Zepton, to defeat Ultraman, who stands in their way of their conquest of Earth. This is already a major deviation from the original series, which may seem bizarre to some of you, I'm sure. In his original appearance, Derocco was not a pawn of the Baltans. He was an alien creature that broke off from a comet that flew dangerously close to the planet. His visit to Earth was short-lived, as he was quickly killed by Gigas and Red King. The biggest similarity between both incarnations is that his powered counterpart has a showdown with a new version of Red King in episode 12. Zepton was likewise not a monster controlled by the aliens. In fact, he was actually summoned by a race of aliens known as the Zeptons. Yeah, he's one of those monsters named after a species named after its home planet, like Virus from planet Virus, or Zegra from planet Zegra, or Vegeta from planet Vegeta. In both versions, the hero team headquarters is nearly decimated by the invaders, while Ultraman is nearly killed in combat. While the original 1967 episode ended with Zepton defeating Ultraman, the 1993 remake ends with Powered using a split-second strategy to destroy Zepton just before his solar energy ran out.
Now feast your eyes on my Ninja Commander's special ability.
There's 2. You know, it's probably just some Hollywood special effect.
It's called Multiplicity, kid, and as long as I keep my Ninja Commander in attack mode, I can summon Ninja Soldier Katana to the playing field.
Every other monster or alien in the series only makes a standalone episode appearance, and I must reiterate, they're all mostly downplayed from their 1966-1967 counterpart. In Baltan's original episode, the alien infiltrated and froze the people working inside of a science lab. The characters struggled to attack the monster because of its illusionary abilities, which always took the team by surprise, as there was no simple strategy to discern the fake Baltans from the real one. How did the team at Winter fare against the deadly menace? What master trick did they pull out of their sleeve to help them stop this stealthy assassin?
Take cover, there's too many of them. Switch to infrared 4. There's actually only one alien. The rest are illusions.
Yep, that's it. They didn't have to look for a shadow being cast by the real figure or anything super innovative, no matter how successful or futile that idea proved to be. All it took to find the placement of the lone alien was just the simple augmentation of their sensors.
It's that easy.
That was easy.
Oh, and instead of a large science lab building, the winner team discovers Baltan hiding in a warehouse of all places. What was he doing there in the first place, if not gathering supplies for his ship? Don't know. I guess the crew had to film the monster in some building that wasn't too expensive to rent out for a night. Kimular's episode is among the most decent, because his Monster on the Loose story doesn't feel quite as boring as the original episode, though it kind of does come off as a bit generic like its predecessor. The big issue I have with it, though, is that there's a B-plot involving some campers that went missing after Kimular first showed up, only for them to just suddenly pop up at the end of the episode with no explanation of where they've been over the last couple of days, or why they waited till then to show up out of nowhere. I do find it kind of hilarious that they used bait to lure the monster away, in a scene that kind of ripped off one of the last scenes in Galala. Although, one thing I found interesting about this episode is that the characters mentioned that this was the monster's first sighting since 1976. I almost wondered if this was meant to imply that this was the same Kimular from the original show, until I realized that its last sighting was in China, not Japan, so that's probably not the case.
Did you know that China and Japan are actually different countries? Oh, really?
Though I'd love to know how this burrowing quadruped was able to relocate itself from Southeast Asia to the United States. But the episode also said Baltan's city attack was the 18th monster attack in 2 years. Could this possibly allude to the monster attacks from Ultraman Great? The underground people in Teleston's episode stayed underground at all times, compared to the original episode where they sent doppelgangers up top to infiltrate the Science Patrol. Rather than displaying them as normal-looking people with patches over their eyes, the new version showcases them as old, decrepit, and wrinkled, as you'd expect for a race of people living underground for eons. But Kai's escape from them is pretty silly. In the original episode, the subterranean people try to hypnotize Hayata and use Ultraman to destroy the world above so they can reclaim it. But his transformation discharges an astronomical light that only ends up killing the underground society. Empowered, the underground people want to use the light within the capsule to reclaim their place on Earth's soil, but Kai points out that they have no idea how to activate the beta capsule, to which one of them just foolishly hands it over to him, hoping he'll show them how. Remember Dada, the Michael Jackson lookalike? Or was it Marilyn Manson? Well, whoever he resembles, he was an alien with 3 faces that came to Earth to abduct 6 scientists for his home world. The actual reasoning of his mission was never explained to the viewer, and this ambiguity only added to the suspense and tension of this classic episode. In this episode, is Dada an alien? No. He's a computer virus from some kind of alternate dimension found inside the internet world, and powers itself by absorbing human essence. I don't even know how to put it in words, to be honest. It was literally that strange. Not an alien, a computer phantom. Scary, right? This Dada is not 3-faced like in the original episode. Instead, 2 other people are infected by the Dada virus, which then converts them into 2 new Dadas, both sporting a face distinguishable from each other and the first one.
2 of the captured executives have been turned into Dadas like Merlin, so now there are 3 of them.
How did this conversion happen to them exactly? Don't know. The scene was probably too expensive for the crew to film, so it's instead just told to us by Agent Young.
The Dada returned to Neuronet as expected, but their trap failed. The electronic cage that Neuronet configured managed to hold Dada for a moment, but then Dada drew enough power to escape and overtake the building.
Lazy writing and tight budget strikes again. Oh, and Dada becomes giant-sized when all three merge together. The exact same thing that happened in the first episode when the three Balton agents merged together. Did I mention lazy writing? Well, you ain't seen nothing yet. Until you see Dada get destroyed when Ultraman destroys a nearby power plant that provided a power source for Dada. Please don't ask me to explain how that works, because I really don't care. Just like in its 1966 episode, before Benila and Abaros are awakened, a slab is found within an ancient sarcophagus, inscribed with a text written in a long-forgotten language. In the original episode, the scientists spent about 2/3 of the episode's runtime trying to translate the epitaph, before both monsters are awakened from their capsules and begin wreaking havoc on the city. Winter soon falls victim to the same problem when they discover a sarcophagus of their own, also encased with a slab embedded with an indecipherable inscription. Ooh, I'm sure eager to see how they uncover its translation. Remember, it took the 1966 scientists a majority of a single episode just to figure it out, and they didn't even have a dictionary to help them. I can't wait to see how the new team uncovers the translation for this enigmatic relic from an ancient civilization. Oh wait, never mind. They just punch it up into a computer and uncover the translation in like 5 seconds flat. No, that doesn't sound like lazy filmmaking at all. It's actually pretty cool. The quality of Zambolar's 1967 and 1993 episode are about on par with each other, in that the episode is pretty intense with its use of pyrotechnics, all of which are highly effective at making the monster, especially his powered incarnation, rather intimidating. There's even a scene where Kai has to go directly into the fire-burdened area of the monster to set a trap, which actually had a lot of tension surrounding the scene that kept me on the edge of my seat.
Hold on, Kai. You can just hold on for 200 meters.
What's your temperature?
500 degrees.
But it's only natural that the episode should fall flat on its feet for reasons that suffer in the same vein as many of the other episodes that deter the fans away from this series. First, just like its original episode, there's somewhat of an eco-message that goes pretty much nowhere in the story. Secondly, like the other episodes, you're probably expecting the fight between Powered and the monster to be slow and embarrassing to watch, right? Well, guess what? There is no fight. That's right, none. Ultraman just stands there, and I guess telepathically convinces Zambolar to go back home. Apparently, the original draft of this episode called for Ultraman kicking Zambolar's crispy behind into oblivion, but it was decided that the conflict should end peacefully, giving the audience the idea that there really wasn't a bad guy in this episode. I'm more inclined to believe the director and everyone else involved realized how terrible the fights were up to this point, and didn't expect anything rich to come with this one either. So they decided to not even have them fight at all. Outside the one beam, Powered fires at the monster. Afterwards, the characters add one quick epitaph to remind us of the episode's eco-theme, that Zambolar thinks mankind has finally learned its lesson about respecting the planet. How? What did Ultraman do to convince him of that? Obviously, nothing happened to teach us a lesson, so the monster should have free reign to come back out and attack us at any given time. Gamora, a member of an extinct species of dinosaur called a Gamorasaurus, is part of a really lackluster story. His body is discovered somewhere in the Andes Mountains, skin still intact, and then he's suddenly resurrected in the middle of the city. Can you guess what it was that revived him? Take a guess. Was he struck by lightning, which restarts his heart, like the dinosaurs from Dinosaurus? Nope. Was he hit with a blast of atomic radiation that revives and mutates him? Nope. He was revived after being hit with rain. He spends a majority of the episode not doing much of anything, except trying to search for a large body of water, similar to the wetlands he thrived in millions of years ago. Winter tries to tranquilize him, but the effects prove to only be temporary, and their explanation of why the tranks failed is nonsensical. In the original episode, Gamora reawakens earlier than expected, because of his exposure to the atmospheric changes between his island and the Japan mainland. In this episode,
He probably got more dehydrated over time than we thought.
he got dehydrated? What kind of sense does that make? The characters are then forced to drop him, which he survives, and then goes on a rampage as he desperately searches for more water. Eventually, Kai has to change into Ultraman to stop him from causing further damage. Not that it really mattered all that much, as Gamora dies from dehydration a minute later, making this probably the laziest staged fight in the whole series. I guess, just like in Zambolar's episode, the crew was embarrassed over the fights in the previous episodes, and knew they couldn't do any better with this one, so they just made the monster weak and dreary, before dying without offering a challenge for the hero. Out of every appearance Derocco's ever had, before and after this series, this may be the best storyline he's ever been gifted. While Derocco was originally just a space monster intended for simple fodder for Red King and Gigas, he's given a second chance in this episode, where he's sent to Earth by the Baltons, not necessarily as a trump card, but as an agent to acquire information about Ultraman's fighting skills, which the aliens then processed into their real last resort. And unlike the previous episodes, Derocco actually puts up a bit of a fight here, one that's actually pretty decent, all things considered. Or at least a fight that's not as cringy as the ones we saw in earlier episodes. After proving his invulnerability to the Spacium Ray, he successfully forces Power to retreat, making him the first monster to defeat him, and then making way for his path to the nearest city.
It's 2 hours away from any inhabited area. We'll rendezvous to process the information we already have and to coordinate our next move. Captain out.
I have to complain how they think it'll take Derocco 2 hours to reach the city, never once considering that the thing very clearly has a pair of wings on its spine, which it never uses in the episode at all, but still. Winter then comes up with a plan to defeat Derocco that involves firing a series of missiles at the monster in the exact same spot, creating a fracture in his armor, and then firing one final shot to obliterate him. With time running out, and despite the near impossible chances of the plan actually succeeding, they follow through with the idea. Before the final shot can be fired, Derocco shoots down the Hawk, almost killing Sanders and Young. With no time or options left, Kai transforms into Ultraman Powered while sitting right behind Beck, leaving her very suspicious as to how or why he disappeared the same time Ultraman appeared. Derocco mortally wounds the hero by slicing a claw across his torso. Ultraman successfully defeats Derocco by shooting his Spacium Ray in the weakened spot of the armor, before changing back into his human form. Beck then finds Kai on the side of the road, and notices he's bleeding from a cut on his chest in the same spot where Ultraman was injured, leading her and the rest of the team to the knowledge that he is Ultraman. By the way, I should probably take this time to point out that both Ultraman and Superman are two superpowered beings capable of pulling off the most extraordinary feats, the likes of which no one can ever dream of, but were ultimately brought into a weakened state because their opponent scratched them. Finally, we get Zepton, the strongest of them all, if that's even saying anything, given the reputation for each powered beast. The Baltons have been carefully observing Ultraman's battles ever since the first episode, studying his strengths and weaknesses, and merging all of this data to form the mold for what soon became Zepton. In the final episode, Zepton is portrayed as more robotic in nature, as opposed to a space dinosaur, as his subtitle implies. His primary directive is to destroy Ultraman, and so he simply halts himself in his position until the hero arrives to do battle. though if he's provoked, he will retaliate. Feeling remorseful for the injury Kai sustained from Derocco, Ultraman finally separates himself from his human host, manifesting in the field to clash with the final instrument of destruction from the Baltons. This wasn't an easy one, as Zepton was able to counter nearly all of Ultraman's frontal assaults, and was also shown to be able to absorb his spacium ray, as well as deflect it. Luckily, with what little time he has left, Power discovered Zepton's weak spot and decimated the alien anomaly just before his solar energy was depleted completely.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
With Ultraman now out of the picture, the Baltons make their dissension, ready to conquer the planet unabated. Their first target is the Winter Team, the only thing left on the planet with the power and technology that exceeds the vast majority of other man-made conventions. Technology that unfortunately doesn't remotely stand a chance against the aliens. Although, I really am curious about something that's just occurred to me.
If the Baltons have been observing Ultraman, analyzing his strengths and his weaknesses,
how exactly does Winter know the aliens are called the Baltons? They mention the name several times as if it's common knowledge to them, but up until this point, the only person who knew their name was Kenichi Kai, who learned the name from Ultraman, and I doubt he would have been foolish enough to recite the name to the crew without them becoming suspicious of his connection to Ultraman. Of course, the characters now know he was Ultraman the whole time, but even so, there was never a time when he mentioned the Baltons by name to anyone. In the 1966 Counterpart episode, the Baltons put Arashi under mind control, and they communicated to the Science Patrol through him, which is how they discovered the name of the aliens. Here, there is no explanation, except for poor writing. Winter attempts to use the crystal in the Beta capsule to launch a laser attack at the mothership, which does nothing to it. Before the Baltons have a chance to counterattack, two new Ultras disguised as red orbs appear to help Winter destroy the mothership, saving mankind from the deathly invaders. Afterwards, the orbs glide down to revive and retrieve their downed comrade, transforming him into a red light and escorting him back into space. Ultraman briefly reveals his face to the Winter Team, a subtle way to bid his farewell to his human comrades, before following his two allies back home to Nebula M78.
Whatever's down there doesn't want us to see it.
You'd think we could see the bottom.